sure we are up and ready, and indeed we are, looks like it. Right, well, good evening everyone, and welcome to Tier 2 once again on a Friday. I'm Cruiser 1872. This is round 4 of our Season 5 Tier 2 Championship, and what we didn't expect. That looks to me like full wet conditions, so we're in for a very interesting qualifying here around this Azerbaijan street circuit. And as you see in there, in the bottom of your screen, David Lawface just joining up in the lobby, and give good old David Lawface just a few minutes to get set up, and then we'll let them say their hellos to the stream. And as well, quite a bit of a stacked lobby this evening as usual, and look towards one of the Red Bull drivers last time in Abu Dhabi, Junuvane, picking up the victory from Groundsy in second place. And as we mentioned our standings from last week, I think I will get our standings for Tier 2 up right about now. And indeed, speaking of Groundsy, they lead our championship by 19 points over Junuvane, with Silverside Boy an unlikely third right now, considering how his race went in Abu Dhabi. Then we've got IFC Pines, a victory to his name in Australia, but no points since. It puts him in 4th, and Revengezilla in P5 for our standings. As I'm unprepared, we'll get our track map up, and I think if we do have him at the ready, David Lawface is ready to say his hellos.
Yeah, good evening, Cruiser, and good evening, everyone watching. Good to be here. Nice little night in a row. Why not? Yeah, it's a different start. Anyway, let's see how the rain affects things. I think people might be blaming the host for the rain, but I for one, I sponsor that. I back that. It's going to be tricky conditions. You have to alter your braking zones. Of course, in the wet, your braking zones are much, much longer. And those of you that use braking lines, well, they're effectively just lies in the rain. So, yeah, it's going to be tricky. I think we'll see some mistakes this session, Cruiser.
Absolutely, and also looking in the chat as well, I believe that's last season's winner around Abu Dhabi, not Abu Dhabi, pardon me, last season around Abu Dhabi, it was Junuvane making it back-to-back in Abu Dhabi, looking to repeat a back-to-back victory around Baku is Midfield Maestro. Good evening to you in the chat, as he just says as well. Good evening, gents, as we're taking a broadcast view of Revengezilla in the Aston Martin for our first lap in Q1, and as you mentioned as well, David, very, very different braking lines and very different, like, obviously braking zones, as we got a yellow flag, and Junuvane's binned it at the castle section, so our first driver to fall victim is a reigning race winner.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on Junu just through the castle section. He had a little bit of a scuffed entry. He tapped the wall on the right-hand side. And yeah, further up, he just didn't have control of the car, and yeah, unfortunately, he's taken his wheel off.
Not the ideal start to the Red Bull team, as I'm seeing as well, a few drivers actually missing the braking point. That looks to me, that's an Alpha Tauri, that could be of Groundsy at turn 2. Missed the braking zone and have went straight on, so not a good start for either of the top two in the championship so far, as we're still following Revengezilla up through the castle. Indeed, a very, very treacherous part of the track. Very, very narrow, and you have to get your braking point right, and everything needs to be perfect through there for you to get a decent lap in qualifying. Now through the very fast triple right-hander section before you slam on the brakes for turn 15. Just a slight graze of the barriers though. I think he gets away with it though, does the Aston Martin driver. And we see our second sector. We can't really compare to any other sessions currently, because this is our first wet qualifying session of the week actually, and I do say of the week and not our final, because on Sunday, so a bit of a shameless plug as well, our Tier 4 championship, which you yourself, David Lawface, will indeed be taking part in across this very, very same track. So I think you've had quite a bit of, shall I say, a bit of research and a bit of homework also. But these raining conditions, as Revengezilla, there's a 158.6. Don't know if that's a good time, but as I mentioned as well, David Lawface, you've got quite a bit of a homework done across this track, and I think you will need a bit of revision after these sessions are complete.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing to take away so far from this week, but before I go into that, can we just appreciate how close those two laps are to each other?
Indeed, actually.
After, yeah. Um, but yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how the driving is affected by the rain tonight. Interestingly, there's a couple of drivers out on the intermediates, at least there was. We had Silverside Boy, I believe, went on an outlap on the inters, and currently at the moment Yorkie is skating his way around the last chicane, and I think that's clear to see that it's probably a little bit too wet for the inters. Although Yorkie is going to go for his lap, so keep an eye out on that and see what happens there.
Indeed, we will. As you mentioned, and also another driver who went for the intermediate tyres, or at least considering it, is General Jake, doing his second race of the season. I believe that's in the Alpine team, unlike what I think was the Mercedes team for Bahrain. So, Jake, from commentator to commentator, good luck, and please don't bin it. Anyway, just approaching the 10-minute mark in Q1, only 2 times so far, so everyone still getting a feel for the street circuit, which usually is just flat out for that final sector, but you've definitely got to consider a bit of a lift, as I think we're going to jump back up to Adrian, who might actually be on another push lap here. I'm seeing a purple middle sector, which I'm not sure if it's a lie or not, but Avengezilla definitely going for a second push lap on a 58.1. So I'm thinking here Adrian might actually be on a second push lap. These drivers can fuel up for more than one lap in the wet, and indeed is Adrian going to go in the pit lane? No, he's not. This is another... Indeed, no, it actually is going to go into the pit lane, so just Toadmasters, you got our hopes up for absolutely no reason. But as well, Jake, another driver to chance it on the intermediate tyres, who's now actually right behind Yorkie on track, I think. Indeed, he's just skating around this track,
Yeah.
nearly in the wall there is the McLaren driver, and I think the little gamble on intermediates hasn't quite worked out yet for Yorkie, as he just about avoids the barrier also. So I think Jake might be considering as well, maybe pitting for a set of wet compound tyres also.
Yeah, so Yuki was down on Adrian's time in Sector 1 by about half a second. Given that it's just three straights, yeah, I'm pretty sure, as Silverside Boy says in the chat, it's just a struggle to keep the heat in the tyres. And although it looks like there's not many puddles on track, it doesn't seem to be really improving past the point of full wets.
A quick look through the field as well. We got Snedden on a lap as well for the Williams team. Speaking of Silverside Boy, mentioned in the chat, as you mentioned as well, saying it's not quite there yet, and the tyres are too cold as Shadows already on a 56.7. So I think that's roughly where the benchmark should be for Q1, as the track does eventually begin to dry up, or at least get a bit of a dry air line, as Hurst goes into a 58.4. I'm thinking here it might not be quite the one lap standout lap, or whatever it is that drivers are hoping for. It may be a case of 2 or 3 laps on these wet compound tyres, get a feel for the track, and then you will have your lap. And also, as mentioned too, I think Jake did hear us in the commentary box, has backed off of that idea for intermediates and is in the pit lane. Meanwhile, I'm seeing, oh, just going by there, we've got a sideways Haas, or it could have been of, I'm actually thinking, was that Snedden who made a mistake?
It
I'm not
was
too
indeed.
sure. It was Snedden,
Uh,
just strolling through the field so quickly, and Jake actually saying in the chat he had wing damage, so that might actually explain why he made the pit stop. But strolling through there very quickly, I seen a car going sideways, but seems like Snedden was the one there.
Yeah, looks like he missed his braking zone into that right-hander before the castle section, and yeah, that's ruined Snedden's lap. But still plenty of time left in the session, around 8 minutes. And well, at the moment we've got one driver out. Plenty of drivers now opting for the intermediates. Let's see if anyone can fare any better. It looks like at the moment the only person on Inters on a hot lap is Jaffmaster. So I think they're looking for potentially around 42 seconds for this first sector to really tell us that it's the crossover. You'll see him come through now. It's a 42.4, so it is getting there. But yeah, you can see in the corners just not having the turn in. That might be down to setup. Obviously, drivers tend to use lower front wings here and rear wings, of course, and maybe that is hampering them at the moment. Getting a lack of turn in as yeah,
Nearly.
you could see nearly going into the wall and becoming the second victim of the castle section tonight.
So far, so good though for the Alfa Romeo driver, as I think while we were going through Jaff Master's strategy, hopefully a master plan, one would say. Hirsch did make a mistake at the castle section, but they are okay to continue, albeit in the pit lane. As I say that, Monkey Boy Kurt has rather heard me say something about the castle section and has dropped it as well, following Junuvane out in Q1. So a lot of work to do for both of those drivers, but from one Alfa Romeo to another. Let's see what Jaff Master can do already on a 1 minute 50. This is going to be close here to the likes of Hirsch and Adrian up to the line for the Alfa Romeo driver, and it's going to be a sub 2 minute lap for Jaff Master, indeed a 2 minute .065. So he will have to do again, but I suppose get a feel for the track, and then you can pick your braking points and pick your turn in a little bit more as the track evolves. With just 6 minutes left to go, only 6 drivers have actually set a lap time, so expect a frenzy by the end of this session.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the wet conditions. Quite often you can go on 2 or 3 flying laps. I think we're going to see here Jaff Master is going to go for a second consecutive flying lap. Something obviously you cannot really do at any track in the dry. So yeah, it's quite popular for drivers to just stick 4 or 5 laps worth of fuel in, and just do laps, get used to the conditions, slowly build up your speed, and I think that's what we're seeing now as a few more drivers come across the line. Shadows the first man into the second man into the 55s after Phenom sets the 55.9 on the intermediates.
A bit of a hot potato up at the front there from Adrian to Law, back to the Haas team in Phenom, and now Shadows on a 55.9 heads the table with just 5 minutes left to go. Still no action yet for the McLaren, still in the pit lane, as I see the movement as well. Midfield Maestro up to 6th place as yellow flag around sector 2, and turn 4, I think that might be Adrian just backing off and letting everyone through. But one driver we're following on right now is the Mercedes of Poya, who showed very strong pace around Abu Dhabi, hoping to repeat that sort of result, but also try not and repeat the amount of penalties that they picked up. But around the track like Baku, it's very, very tough to get penalties, but albeit there is a very big penalty to pay, as a lot of our drivers have found out, that this being a street circuit, there's plenty of risks and plenty of walls to hit, so hopefully that's not what most of our drivers will have to endure with tonight, and hopefully we don't endure with multiple safety cars. And as well, in the Twitch chat, good evening to you, Blunt Blade, and there's also another hello gents, and a wet Baku, they say, is not very good. Well, I suppose it's not very good for racing, but in terms of qualifying, it's certainly going to get very interesting by the end of the session, and with Monkey Boy Kurt and Junuvane already eliminated, as Tiddlewink sliding it around turn 7 up towards the castle section in that Ferrari. So we're going to have only 3 drivers eliminated in Q1, as we've got a yellow flag on the main straight. That's a Haas thrown into the pit lane there. Very good, why we get a yellow flag there. But still following Tiddlewink, currently in 12th. Might be their one and only lap, or they might go for a recharge and go for one more. Actually, I'm seeing there from the steering wheel on the Ferrari as they go very deep, and that could be front wing damage. I was going to mention there that they're not using they're not mentioning their battery, so they could actually just be doing for a bit of a fuel around this track before they go for a push lap, but they could actually have been pushing the limits too hard and have a bit of wing damage.
Yep, he was putting pretty good to times in, even if he didn't have the ERS on. He has now got it on, as you can see. Well, you can't see, I can see. Putting it on that start-finish straight, and it's a benchmark of 157, so that's probably looking pretty handy for the Ferrari driver tonight, who has just about pipped his teammate for the moment, but still 2.5 minutes left in this session. Some people leaving it right to the end. Obviously, that is when the track will be quickest. However, yeah, could it be too late? You never know. Poeya is in the pits, having not set a lap. That's interesting. They need to come out. Well,
And
unless they
I
have,
think they've
they
heard
have
you.
just come out.
Yeah, this has
Yeah.
got to be an absolute stormer of a lap here from Poya to get to the checkered flag, or else they'll be risking elimination. If I tell a lie, they will be eliminated in Q1. And a very strong field so far of, well, dare I say, drivers not making it into Q2, let alone Q3. And that Mercedes very much in jeopardy. Another